Welcome everyone. In this video, we're going to cover the quality process. This is a graphic that I put together a while back based on a number of different systems. A lot of this text would be updated to become specific for your company, but the general principles follow the same pattern, the same process. And I want to anchor everybody's mind to a couple of concepts before I get started. Number one, we always plan it first and then build it right and finish as we go. Now that might not sound like something remarkable or novel, but when we are working in the general industry at the pace the industry typically follows, most of the time we just go and attempt to build it as fast as we can, and we rush. So the actual ability to plan it first and take that time, whether it's in pre-construction or ahead of time, I'm not sure that it's exactly a sacrifice, but it's definitely something that we should take. And then building it right and making sure that we do the QC checks while we're there doing the work, and then finishing that work and not just going and starting a bunch of new work before we're actually finished with something. So let me go through this. The general system is up here at the top, and then at the bottom there are little checklists. So most QC plans are huge manuals. You have to read through them and figure it out. There's some decoding there, some translation. It's just a mess. I remember at Hensel Phelps, they did a really good job with quality. And one of the things that it said, when it comes to purchasing, there's three key things you have to remember: scope, scope, and scope. When we are signing up a trade partner from start to finish and we're teaming with them and we're purchasing, we need to make sure that we are getting the right scope. And so if we've at this point gotten that scope and we've identified what trade is going to do what scope of work, then the first thing that we do 2 weeks after that is we have a pre-mobilization meeting or an email. If it's a meeting, it's right here. If it's an email, it's right here. And the purpose is to say, hey, how do we deal with correspondence? What's going on for site logistics? Here's the schedule and when we expect you out here. These are the things the owner wants. And what do you, contractor, need to know for onboarding? And then we need to know what you're going to do for deliveries, and we need to know what you're going to do for all of your deliverables. Are you going to have those deliverables on time, ready to go? Project specific plans, schedule, feature of work requirements, your insurance, your submittals, everything else, permitting taken care of before you come to the pre-installation meeting or the pre-construction meeting. So that meeting is to say, here's what we want, and that enables the trade partner to then go ahead and arrive at this pre-construction meeting or the pre-install meeting 3 weeks before the work is going to start. There's an interesting thing here. I like to make sure that this is 3 weeks before the work. That way, if the foreman, the superintendents come and they haven't read the plans and the specs and they haven't looked through the information and they're not ready, I can cancel that 3-week meeting and at least have a meeting 2 weeks beforehand. And that's where the foreman and the superintendent get together, and the purpose is to collect and explain the deliverables and enable the foreman and the superintendent to be successful on site. And then here's the checklist. The reason we want to do that is to set clear expectations so that when they start, we can then go in and do an in-place mock-up or initial inspection or a first-in-place mock-up, meaning, hey, we've done the pre-construction meeting or the pre-installation meeting, whatever you call it. Now you're going to go do your work. Let's go look at the first thing that you're going to do. After that, you set a date and you say, when is going to be our in-place, first-in-place inspection or mock-up, right? And that needs to be just the first thing that they accomplish. And then once the crew and the superintendents and the workers got it, then it's about just following up and making sure you observe continually. And then before they leave and demobilize the site, making sure that you have your rolling completion list 100%. So that's really where we are with the overall system. Let's go through these. Really, the process starts with, hey, we need to verify the contractor's scope and ensure the contractor is assigned or contracted to something, a portion of the work they're legally obligated to perform. Once we do that, we explain to the contractor the deliverable needs. We commit that contractor to delivering those by the pre-installation meeting or the pre-construction meeting. So that means this needs to prep that contractor to be done by the time you're over here. That pre-installation meeting is to collect and explain the deliverables, enable the foreman and the superintendent to be successful so that they can go do the first thing that they have as a part of their work and get the crews off on the right foot and set the expectation. Once you set them off on the right foot, you can just do follow-up walks with them, and then before they demobilize, make sure that we have done a rolling completion list and gotten them to finish before they leave. Why is that such an important thing? Well, we all know once they leave, it's hard to get them back. Making sure that we do these two steps before they leave is absolutely crucial. The purpose down here at the bottom is make sure that you have your checklist for each step of the game or each phase of the game so that you can be successful with it. Now, these are my triggers and they make sense to me from my background, but each company will have their own focus and their own triggers. And you'll get your own naming and everything dialed in the way you want. And you can use these templates and make your own scorecard. But the bottom line is, for each meeting, we're going to make sure that we're successful every time. The owner's top 10, that's usually at the beginning in pre-construction. I like to ask the owner, hey, what are the top 10 things important to you? Is it quality? Is it waterproofing? Is it safety? Is it the neighbors? Is it this entryway? Like, what are the big things? And I'll make that checklist and I'll make sure that we cover that when we're buying out scopes and we're going through this quality process. The other thing is a lot of companies have internal checklists for different types of work. Like, let's say your company has a checklist and it's on in-wall framing, right? Why not bring that checklist to that meeting? I think that's a good idea. So yours will be specific, but I did want to explain what 1 and 2 on these really meant. Let's say that you're in your office, you need a contractor for a scope. A lot of project engineers, until they get the right training, they think that their job is about RFIs. They think it's about submittals. They think it's about pay applications. Well, these are actually just tools. Their job, the PM's job, the super's job, it's not about these tools. This becomes our focal point. The thing that project engineer, a PM, a superintendent should be doing is saying, from the day that we contract a subcontractor, or what I call trade partners, comes on board to the time they leave, how can we plan it first, build it right, and finish as we go? And so I like to focus project engineers' minds in this direction and say, hey, this is what we're doing. We're not doing tools. If they're like, no, I write RFIs. No, you don't. You take a contractor from start to finish, plan it first, build it right, finish as you go. An RFI is just like one tool along that duration. If you and your project manager, you're like, hey, I've got a scope that I want to take from start to finish. There's a number of trades out here. You may do a bidding process where you look at multiple options. You look at their pricing. You get 3 different quotes. There's a number of different processes that you can do there. But let's say that you've selected a contractor. Well, the key there is to make sure that you've identified their inclusions and exclusions clearly. And it's not only important to get the PM's view on this. You want the PM and the super to be a part of that and to go through the right checklist item and have the right inclusions and exclusions. So anything that we do there, project managers are awesome and I love them, but let's not just leave it to one person, because everybody should have a backup. Everybody should have a second set of eyes. Again, in that teaming part of the process, that purchasing, we want to make sure that we get the right scope, that we have them locked in, and not just locked into the plans and specs, but also, do they need to build a protection deck? Do they need to include scaffolding? Do they need to include a QC person? Let's get both persons' wisdom on that as we move forward. Once you have a contractor, the next step after that is, at least within 2 weeks, there needs to be a meeting. And if you're in a meeting, that means you would likely have maybe the owner of the company, you have the PM of the company, maybe the owner, maybe the superintendent, and you're going to get them into a meeting. And that meeting is called your pre-mobilization, meaning that you're not mobilized, but what you need to do is make sure that you're prepping and you're getting everything ready. So you're talking with this group of people and you have your list of things that you want to cover. And that list is primarily going through what is going to be needed by the time that you start your work. We have that pre-construction meeting. You're going to want submittals, logistics drawings. You want to have contact lists, insurance, bond requirements, your emergency contact list. You're going to want to have your safety plan, your quality plan. What are all the things that you want to see here? You need to prep them for it here. That's what that meeting is. Now, if you have a lot of contractors and you're like, I'm not going to have that many meetings with these people. I'm not going to ask 1, 2, 3 people to come all the way out here to visit us. Well, that's fine. Then this needs to be an email, or what at Hensel Phelps they used to call a job information policy brochure. So in an email, this is a good use for an email. Hey, this is this is what we expect. This is the date. This is the pre-construction meeting. This is the job information policy brochure. This is how we do billing, accounting, blah, blah, blah. Give them that information in as clear a manner as you possibly can early on, so it sets them up for this meeting. If you've done this within 2 weeks, I'd rather you send that email or have that meeting right away, but at least don't let 2 weeks go by. The next thing on this one, this is your pre-con. This is really important. Who shows up to the pre-con? It should probably still be the super. I'm not too worried about the owner being there. The PM can still show up, but I want the foreman for that work to be there. This can be in person or Zoom. This could also be a site meeting where the foreman and super are just out there in the site and you're like, here's our agenda. We're going to go through this. But the key here is there's information in your brain. There's information in the PM's brain. There's information on the trade partner PM's brain. There's information in the trade partner super's brain. So what are we attempting to do? I bet you guessed it. We want all of that transferred, just like you would transfer files on a computer over into that foreman's brain. People will forget what they were supposed to do. It also needs to go onto a checklist, or what I call feature of work board. As it gets taught, it gets written down and it all comes onto a checklist. Why would we want to do that? Well, what if we change foreman? What if the foreman forgets? He or she is just human. So we want to make sure that in that pre-construction meeting that we've educated the foreman and that we also have clear expectations. I like the checklist where it has simple bullets to the left and then over here to the right, we have have really, really good pictures. Quality is this simple. It's does the foreman and the workers know what the expectations are, and are they fulfilling those expectations? Do they know, and are they fulfilling? Know and deliver. Know, deliver. Know, deliver. It's that simple. And if our foremen and workers don't know the expectations, then we haven't queued them up from the plans, the purchasing, the pre-mobilization, the submittal process, and a pre-construction meeting process to enable them to be successful. Now, again, this is 3 weeks ahead of time because I usually send an email or on the invite it says, come having read the plans and the specifications. And if they don't read the plans and the specifications, then I won't be mean about it. I'll be like, team, this is too important. We're moving it to next week, but you've got to have that read before you come. Well, I can cancel that meeting and at least have that 2 weeks ahead and make sure I get that done. Once they then go to work and install their work, they should have a piece. They should have something that they've built, and we go converge as a team, and we have all of these humans, these little V's, these wonderful workers and foremen that we respect. And we're like, hey team, we care enough about you to make sure that this is right and that we're not wasting your time. Let's go inspect the work, compare it to the checklist over here, and ask for feedback. How can we do this better? Does this meet the standards? And create that social group and that unity around that product. And I usually call that the first in place. It can be called a mock-up, it can be called an initial inspection, whatever you want to call it, but that's when it's first released to us. This sounds like a lot of work, and it is, quite frankly, but if at a minimum, a superintendent on a job site will have pre-cons for their high-risk features of work, and if you will go out and inspect the first bit of work, at least if it's just those two things, you can build a remarkable job. A quality system is not just a quality system, it's actually a safety system, because if we install something wrong, it can cost in time and money 4 to 12 times what it cost originally. The other thing is a lot of workers get hurt when they have to rework something and demolish them. So if you have a good quality plan, you also have an improved safety plan. The other thing you have is a good schedule, because one of the main ways to create flow on a job site and to beat your duration in a safe and stable way is to install things right the first time. So your quality system is also a safety and schedule system. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. So getting off on the right foot there is absolutely crucial. I really think that that's important. Once you have that first in place, then again, you can update your checklist and just continually inspect it and then make sure that they finish out and close out their change orders and their punch list as they go. I really think that this is the key. Now, there's a concept that I've been learning about, and I think I finally understand why it's so important. One process flow. And this is actually the key to construction. Sometimes people call it one piece flow, but in construction, we have processes as the flow unit, not a piece. Here's how it works. If you have zone 1, 2, and 3, this is what happens. That foreman and that crew, what they need is obviously the tools, the materials, the equipment, the information, the layout, right, to go do work in there. But this is the most important thing. They need a standard. And so remember that feature of workboard or that checklist with pictures that I told you about? If that crew is like, okay, I'm about to do zone 1, and then we'll do 2 after that and 3 after that. We're about to go do zone 1 for that type of work. Let's review it as a team. And then they go do the work and they work through this zone. If they have an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours afterwards to say, all right, let's huddle up again. What would we want to do differently? And they're like, okay, well, if I move the generator closer, that would work. We need 2 or 3 more extension cords. Hey, I think we should buy this different type of ladder. Hey, if we move the materials at this part of the zone, I think we could go faster. Whatever it is, you update that checklist, remember, and you transfer your ideas. Then when that trade or that process, meaning the foreman and the workers come over here and they're like, okay, now we're about to do zone 2. All right, what did we decide from last time? Let's go do the work. And then they have hopefully an hour afterwards to say, what did we learn? What do we want to do better? This is how we get better in construction. Standard, do the work, improve. Standard, do the work, improve. Standard, do the work, improve. Over and over and over and over and over again. But we will never do this if we do not have a buffer between tax zones, between their schedule. We will never do this if we don't give them 30 minutes or an hour between zones to go do this kind of reflection and make these improvements. This is how we get better in construction. And everybody's so focused on rush, push, hurry. We don't have time. Like, they're not getting better. They're literally just throwing their materials and their trash everywhere. Go, 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 blah, blah, blah. And the workers are just trying to keep up. And the faster they go, the more waste they make, the more mess, the busier they get. And they think that busyness is effectiveness. Busyness is not effectiveness. This hour that you spend reflecting is 100 times more valuable than being busy and rushing on a construction project. And so I think that's absolutely crucial. When you're in your team meeting on a weekly basis for your project, you should should be able to start out that team meeting with positive shout outs, do your lightning round, talk about coverage and PTO, safety. But then most of your team meeting on a construction project should be what's called a quality point of release. What that means is that you know the different steps that you have to follow as a part of your quality plan. You know that you want to review the owner's top 10, you want to develop a buyout log, you want to develop a procurement log, you want the schedule to say, hey, we're ready to take that specific scope of work. We need a work order executed, pre-mobilization meeting or pre-construction meeting, whatever you call it. We need the submittals. We need the submittals approved. We need a feature of work board, and then we're ready to do the pre-construction meeting. This is a process. Let's say, for instance, that you had contractor number one. This was concrete. So this concrete contractor, once you have, hey, we're starting concrete, then this concrete contractor moves down to, okay, now we need a work order executed or a contract. Okay, now that that's done, now we need a pre-mobilization meeting. Okay, now that that's done, now we need their submittals. Now that that's done, we need submittals approved. Now that that's done, we need our quality feature of work board. Okay, knowing what scopes are coming in the queue should be one of the main focuses of your team meeting. Now let's come back over here. This is the process you should follow, and what I'm asking everybody to do is to make this company specific so you can follow your own process. Now this is an example, and I'm going to give a shout out to Oakland Construction because they do a killer job of this. This is an example of one of the feature of work boards that they did. You have your goals, you have your methods, you have pictures here of what it's supposed to look like. They had one of these made for every high risk feature of work that they had on their project site, and it was absolutely phenomenal. Like, it was just so good. If you could give this to the foreman again and say, all right, here's the foreman and the workers, right? And they are able to review that, then go do the work like I drew on the board. And then at the end of that, say, all right, now let's go check out this checklist. What would we do differently? What improvements would we make? What are we seeing, right? Then when they come over here to go do zone 2, and I'll move the crew over here, then literally they can say, all right, now I know the standard. Let me go do zone 2 with my new standard. And then let's take an hour to update that. Let's go ahead and make sure we have all of our improvements listed down on the feature work. And it just keeps continuing and continuing and continuing. And we get better and better and better, just like running plays in football. That's really the concept of having a quality process. I hope that works for everybody. On we go.